And we are now on part 3 of Genesis chapters 37 to 50 of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, TLV. And we are now actually coming to the end of chapter 40, where Joseph is interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, and he's already interpreted and also gave him the plan. So now the plan seemed good in the eyes of Pharaoh as well as all his servants. Then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can a man like this be found, one in whom is God's Spirit?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You will be over my house, and all my people will pay homage to you. Only in relation to the throne will I be greater than you." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I appoint you over the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, clothed him with fine linen garments, and put a chain of gold around his neck. Then he had him ride in the chariot as second in command, the one that belonged to him, and they called out before him, "Kneel down." So he appointed him over the whole land. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission no one will lift up his hand or his foot in the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zephanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as his wife. Then Joseph went out in charge of the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he began serving as representative of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and passed throughout the whole land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced in heaps. So he gathered all the food in the land of Egypt during the 7 years, and put food in the cities, the food from the city fields surrounding the cities he put in each city. So Joseph stored up grain like the sand of the sea, vast amounts, until he stopped keeping record because it was beyond counting. Two sons also had been born to Joseph before the year that famine came. Blech, I'm getting tongue-tied here. Two sons also had been born to Joseph before the year of famine came, born to him by Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, because God has caused me to forget all my trouble and all my father's house. And the second he named Ephraim, because God has made me fruitful in the land of my oppression. Then the 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine started to come, just as Joseph had said. So there was famine in all the lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was bread. When the whole land of Egypt suffered famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, and Pharaoh said to all of Egypt, "Go to Joseph, do whatever he tells you." The famine was over all the entire land, so Joseph opened up all that was among them and sold grain to Egypt. Then the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. Yet the whole world came to Egypt to buy grain to Joseph, because the famine was severe in the whole world. So that is how Joseph actually came into power. So God was actually knew what he was doing when this was allowed to happen to Joseph, because what you're going to find out is and what Joseph is going to tell them. I'm not even going to give you a spoiler alert. We're just going to keep going here. Um, because the story gets more exciting here. Chapter 42, Joseph meets his brothers. Here we go. Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, so Jacob said to his sons, "Why are you looking at each other?" Then he said, "Look, I've heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some grain for us there, so that we'll live and not die." So Joseph's brothers went down, 10 of them, to buy grain from Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob did not send, for he said an accident might happen to him. The sons of Israel went to buy grain among the others who were coming, because the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the ruler over the land. He was the provider of grain for all the people of the earth. Then Joseph's brothers came and bowed down to him with faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he made himself unrecognizable to them. Then he spoke harshly and said to them, "Where have you come from?" from the land of Canaan, they said, to buy grain as food. Though Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams he had about them bowing down to him, and here they were doing that very thing. He said to them, "You're spies. You've come to see the undefended places in the land." "No, my lord," they said to him. "Your servants came to buy grain as food." "All of us, we are sons of one man. We're honest. Your servants have never been spies." "Not so," he said to them. "Rather, you've come to see the undefended places in the land." But, but they said, "We are your servants. Your servants are 12 brothers, sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Look, the youngest is with our father today, and the other one is no more." Joseph said to them, "It's just like I told you when I said you're spies. But by this you'll be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you'll not leave from here until your youngest brother comes here. Send one from among yourselves to get your brother while you remain confined, in order to test your words, to see whether the truth is with you. If not, by the life of Pharaoh, you're definitely spies." So he put them together in custody for 3 days. Then Joseph said to them on the third day, "Do this and you will live. I fear God. If you're honest, let one of your brothers remain as a prisoner in the guardhouse where you've been, while you go and bring grain for the hunger in your homes. And your youngest brother bring to me, so that your words can be verified and you won't die." So they did. Then each man to his brother, "We're truly guilty for our brother." This is what they're saying to each other. "We saw the distress of his soul, and when he begged us for mercy, but we didn't listen. That's why this distress has come to us." Reuben answered them and said, "Didn't I tell you, don't sin against the boy? But you didn't listen. Now see how his blood is now being accounted for." They did not know that Joseph was listening, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept. When he turned back to them and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and tied him up before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return each man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. So it was done for them. Then they loaded their grain on their donkeys, and they left from there. As one of them opened his sack to give fodder to his donkey to the lodge, he saw his money. Behold, it was in the opening of his bag. So he said to his brothers, "My money has been returned. Look, it's in my bag." Their hearts sank. Trembling, each one turned to his brother and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke with us harshly and took us as spies of the land. But we said to him, "We're honest. We've never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan." Then the Lord of the land, said to us, "By this I'll know if you're honest. Leave one of your brothers with me. As for the hunger of your homes, take and go. Then bring your youngest brother to me, so that I may know you are not spies, but you are honest. I'll give you back your brother, and you can move about freely in the land." Now as they were emptying their sacks, behold, there was each man's bundle of money in his sack. When they saw their money bundles, they and their father, they were very afraid. And then their father Jacob said to them, "You've made me childless. Joseph is no more. Now Simeon is gone, and next you'll take Benjamin. Everything is against me." Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "You can put my 2 sons to death if I don't bring him back to you. Put him in my hand, and I will return him to you." But he said, "My son will not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone remains. And if harm should happen to him along the way you're going, you'll bring my gray hair down to Sheol in grief." So that is chapter 42. Pretty exciting, huh? How this is going. I just want to mention, before we go to chapter 43, that Joseph's Egyptian name means "God speaks, he lives, the preserver of life, creator of life." Those are the meanings of his Egyptian name. Zephaniah Paneah is Joseph's Egyptian name. So how quickly Joseph Joseph's life changed once he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. He was put in charge, and he was no longer being oppressed. He was living in Egypt, and he was right under Pharaoh as far as the most powerful man in Egypt. So chapter 43, Judah pledges for Benjamin. Now the famine was severe in the land. When they finished eating the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go back, buy us a little food." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us firmly, saying, 'You won't see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy grain for you for food. But if you won't send him, we won't go down, because the man said to us, you won't see my face unless your brother is with you.' Then Israel said, 'Why do you do evil to me by telling the man that you have another brother? Why did you do this?' They said, 'The man questioned particularly about us and about our relatives, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have a brother?' So we spoke to him on the basis of these words. How could we possibly know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Please send the boy with me, and we'll get up and go, so that we'll live and not die, we and you and our children. I myself will be his pledge. You can demand him back from my own hand. If I don't bring him back to you and place him before you, then you can blame me all my days. If we had not delayed, we could have returned twice by now." Then their father Israel said to him, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags, and bring an offering down to the man, a little balsam and a little honey, gum and myrrh, pistachios and almonds. Also take in your hand a double portion of silver, and bring back in your hand the silver that had been returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was just a mistake. Take your brother too. Now get up, go back to the man. May El Shaddai grant you mercy before the man, so that he may release your other brother to you, along with Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." The brothers returned with Benjamin. When the men took this offering, they also took the double portion of silver in their hand, as well as Benjamin. So they got up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the one over the house, "Bring the men into the house, slaughter an animal, and prepare it, for the men will eat with me this afternoon." So the man did as Joseph said, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. But the men were afraid because they had been brought into Joseph's house. They said, "It's because of the silver that was returned to our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, to pounce on us and fall on us and take us as slaves along with our donkeys." So they approached the man who was over Joseph's house and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. "I beg your pardon, my lord," they said. "We indeed came down on the previous occasion to buy grain for food. When we came to the lodge and opened our sacks, behold, there was each man's money at the opening of the sack, the full amount of our money, so we returned it in our hand. Moreover, we brought down other money in our hand to buy grain for food. We didn't know who put our money into our sacks." "Be at peace," he replied. "Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. Your money had come to me." Then he brought Simeon out to them, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house, gave them water, and they washed their feet. He also provided fodder for their donkeys. So they prepared the offering for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they were going to eat there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the offering in their hand into the house, and they bowed down to the ground to him. Then he asked if they were well, and said, "Is he well, your elderly father that you told me about? Is he still alive?" "Your servant, our father, is well," they said. "He's still alive." Then they knelt and bowed down. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother whom you mentioned to me?" Then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, because his compassion grew warm and tender towards his brother, so that he wanted to cry. So he went into an inner room and wept there. Then he washed his face, came out, and controlled himself. "Serve the food," he said. So they served him by himself. them by themselves, and the Egyptians who were eating with him by themselves, for Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews because it was an abomination to Egyptians. They were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. The men looked at each other in astonishment. Then portions were brought to them from before him, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times larger than any of their portions, yet they drank and made merry with him. And my counter stopped. So I'm going to pause this and we're going to come back with the next part. I'm not sure. I think I might have lost a minute or two here. So I'm not sure where I really truly am on this counter. So I'm going to pause it to be on the safe side. And if it's a short part, that's okay too. I just don't want to run totally over. So we'll be back with the next part, and that will be chapter 44.